Hi, I'm Darn, and I'm just going to dive straight into the best attackers to use against Zapdos. Zapdos is an electric and flying type Pokemon. Electric's only weakness is ground type, and flying's only weakness is ice, rock, and electric. Because of its electric flying typing, this means that electric moves won't be super effective against him, and it will have a resistance to ground type moves, so they'll be not very effective against him. This leaves so only ice and rock will be super effective against Zapdos. So if you're thinking, that's great, I can use Cloyster, Lapras, and Aerodactyl, they've all got attacks that'll be super effective against Zapdos. You'd be wrong. Zapdos' electric attacks are super effective against flying and water types. So if your Pokemon are either of these two types, they will take super effective damage from Zapdos and get taken out really quickly. The next thing to know are the types of attacks that'll be not very effective against Zapdos. Because he's electric and flying, this means he will be resistant to flying, steel, bug, fighting, grass, and ground type moves. So if you use Pokemon that use any of these types of moves, their attacks will be not very effective. Oh, but what about Pokemon that are resistant and weak to Zapdos' electrical attacks? This is the case for Dragonite and Kingdra. They are dragon flying and dragon water types. Their two types cancel each other out, meaning that they will take a normal amount of damage from Zapdos. Alright, so the best attackers with ice type moves that will not take super effective damage from Zapdos are Jinx, Piloswine, Sneasel, and Kingdra. Jinx is the best attacker of the lot and can have both of her attacks as ice type. She will deal a lot of super effective damage, but also take a decent amount of damage from Zapdos. Piloswine is the next best choice, who can also have both of its attacks as ice type, meaning that it will also do a good amount of super effective damage against Zapdos. Plus, Piloswine's ground typing means it will be double resistant to Zapdos' electrical attacks, meaning that Piloswine will be able to tank a lot of damage and also give a lot of super effective damage. The last two are Sneasel and Kingdra. Both have attacks slightly better than Piloswine. Sneasel can have both of its attacks as ice type, whereas Kingdra can only have one ice type attack. Both of these Pokemon will be able to deal a decent amount of super effective damage against Zapdos, but will also be able to take a decent amount of normal damage from Zapdos. Because Jinx and Piloswine are just all around better, Sneasel and Kingdra should be just considered as backup attackers if you've got nothing better. And now for the list of best attackers that can do rock type damage against Zapdos. Sudowoodo, Tyranitar, Golem, Piloswine, Nidoqueen, and Rhydon. Tyranitar is by far the best attacker of the lot, but it can only learn one rock type move, meaning you'll want to have his fast attack as bite in order to do the most amount of damage. The next best choice is Golem, who can have both of his attacks as rock type. Golem's ground typing also gives it a double resistance against Zapdos' attacks, meaning that he'll be able to take the most amount of damage and also deal the most amount of damage. In terms of an all-rounder, Golem is the best choice. The next good choice of attackers are Piloswine and Nidoqueen. Because Piloswine is ice and ground type, he's better suited to having ice type moves, but rock type moves will work as well. Nidoqueen and Piloswine can only learn one rock type attack. Nidoqueen's ground typing also gives it a double resistance against Zapdos' electrical attacks, making it a decent choice. Next is Rhydon. Although he is usually one of the best all-round attackers, in this situation he can only learn one rock type attack, and both his fast attacks will be not very effective against Zapdos, as they're fighting and ground type attacks. But because of Rhydon's ground typing, he'll have a double resistance to Zapdos' attacks, making him a decent backup choice if you've got nothing else. And lastly, we have Sudowoodo. Usually not a good attacker, but because both of its attacks can be rock type, this means the Sudowoodo will be able to do a decent amount of super effective damage against Zapdos, but will also take a decent amount of neutral damage from Zapdos. And lastly, if you don't have any Pokemon that'll be super effective against Zapdos, but you want to know what are the best all-round attackers that will do a decent amount of neutral damage, but also won't take any super effective damage from Zapdos. This list of Pokemon is assuming that you're using attacks that are the same type as the Pokemon. So electric Pokemon use electric attacks, fire Pokemon use fire attacks, etc. The best Pokemon out of this category are Alakazam, Gengar, Dragonite, and Espeon. All of these Pokemon have ridiculously high attacks. Although these Pokemon will take a neutral amount of damage, they are the best choice of attackers for doing neutral offensive damage. The next best choice are Flareon, Jolteon, Exeggutor, and Zapdos. All of these Pokemon have really good attack stats. Flareon and Zapdos will take a neutral amount of damage. Zapdos will take neutral damage from electrical attacks because it is both resistant to and weak against electric, whereas Jolteon and Exeggutor have resistance to Zapdos' attacks, meaning they'll be able to take more damage and would be your preferred choice out of the four. The next best choice of neutral attackers are Arcanine, Houndoom, Typhlosion, and Magneton. The 3 fire types again will take neutral damage, whereas Magneton's electric typing gives it a resistance to Zapdos' electrical attacks. The next set of decent attackers are Ampharos and Granbull. Granbull will take neutral damage and deal neutral damage, whereas Ampharos will deal neutral damage but also resist Zapdos' electrical attacks. And as we move into the lower tiers of the still decent all-round attackers, we have Nidoking, Victreebel, Rapidash, and Magmar. Rapidash and Magmar will again take neutral damage and deal neutral damage. Victreebel's grass typing gives it a resistance to Zapdos' attacks, and Nidoking's ground typing gives it a double resistance to Zapdos' attacks. And then the last Pokemon on the list, these should really be taken as pure backups if you've got absolutely nothing else. Muk, Mr. Mime, Electabuzz, Tauros, Snorlax, Porygon 2, and Stantler. Electabuzz is the only one that'll resist Zapdos' attacks, whereas all the rest will take neutral damage. But again, this is the weakest tier of attackers and should only be used if you've got nothing else. So yeah, basically they're the best Pokemon to use against Zapdos. So in summary, use Rock and Ice type attacks for the most amount of damage, and do not use Flying, Steel, Fighting, Bug, Grass and Ground type attacks, as they will be not very effective against Zapdos. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to share it with your Pokemon raid groups and let everybody know the best way to attack Zapdos, because that way it gets them beat quicker, and if you're in smaller groups it maximizes your chances of beating them. So if you liked the video, be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, all that usual crack. Definitely be sure to check out my best defensive Pokemon to use against Zapdos, so you know who the best Pokemon is that can tank all of Zapdos' attacks. That's all from me, see you in the next one.